Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I don't know who came up with that saying, but that saying is pants. It doesn't even make any sense. Sticks and stones will break your bones. Words also hurt too. Hello and welcome to the Toya Talks podcast. My name is Toya Washington, often imitated, never ever duplicated. Hey! Why am I like this? I'm actually a little bit mad. Hi, so I started off with the saying, sticks and stones will break my bones and words will never hurt me. Because number one, it is a very rubbish saying. But number two, I was really inspired by something that I was watching recently. And it was actually a Snapchat follower that asked me and recommended, that I watched on ITV, Sticks and Stones. I watched it before Christmas and I have just checked as well to make sure. I think it's on ITV Hub, so you can go back and rewatch it. It's a 3-part episode called Sticks and Stones. And it basically charters this black man who's a sales associate. His name is Thomas Benson. And he starts to think that his colleagues may have it out for him. So that's the first episode. I've made a couple of notes and I'll discuss it. So the first episode, he thinks his colleagues are after him or have it in for him. And it's this pervasive underlying bullying. And they masquerade it and they call it banter. What is banter? Banter is a way, as far as I'm concerned, of masquerading sometimes bullying that happens in the office. Oh, we're just joking. Banter, banter, banter. No one used that word with me, because I don't like the word banter because it's a stupid word. So in the first episode, you basically start to see kind of what happens. They leave post-it notes and, it all stemmed from the fact that he had a really important sales pitch and he, didn't deliver on the sales pitch. And I think he overexerted himself. He put too much pressure on himself and he ended up folding. And what then happens is the work colleagues then start gang up against him, but make him think that it's in his mind. So you also start thinking maybe it's in his mind. But as the story develops and you start seeing certain things, and from my perspective, having been bullied at work and obviously had stories told to me, witnessed certain things, I knew quite early on that it wasn't actually in his head. So the first episode deals with the themes of vengeance. It deals with mental health, self-pressure, sabotage, work humiliation, and boundaries. And I'm going to have a whole separate podcast to talk about whole separate episode discussing boundaries at work because Thomas didn't have any. And that's the fact. He didn't. And then the second episode deals with, what did it say about the second episode? Thomas's life spirals further as one night has devastating consequences. But then you start seeing the consequences in his life of what he's encountering at work. So some of the themes that you see in the second episode has to do with more the effects of his mental health, understanding and knowing how to assert himself, and things like that. And the last episode, everything comes to a head. And what they say as a summary of the episode 3 is Thomas finally tells his boss, Chris Carter, that he is being bullied. I'm going to recommend to every single person who listens to this podcast, follows me on Snapchat, you guys all need to watch Sticks and Stones on ITV. It is still there for you to go and listen to, and I hugely and highly recommend it. In fact, I think workplaces need to play it to everybody as part of their upskilling of staff and staff awareness and cultural awareness and things like that. I think when I went on Twitter, because I was really interested to see how Twitter responded, and people were saying, they felt uncomfortable watching it, this, them, and the other. And I thought to myself, do you know how uncomfortable it also is to be in those type of situations and you've got work colleagues witnessing this, but they don't speak up? And I'm not saying there's an obligation for your work colleagues to defend you. That's not what I'm trying to say. But it's equally as uncomfortable knowing that you're actually going through those situations. I've been bullied at work several times in the past. And I say in the past quite loudly because I have learned and grown so much in the workplace. I am the last person you want to bully at work or attempt, because it will always only ever be an attempt, because that's a madness. But I think the issue that I had with Thomas was that, number one, he never set boundaries, and I think he allowed his work colleagues to be over familiar. And I need people to understand that even though you spend more time at work than you do at home, they are still your work colleagues. Your work colleagues are not your family. They're just people you work with. The common denominator is work, and that's what brings you all together. And I'm not saying you never make friends at work, but the true test of any friendships, if you do have authentic friendships at work, is when one of you leaves and you can still sustain some type of friendship outside of work. Those are real friends. At work, you're not friends. You're just colleagues that see each other Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 or 8:30 to 6 or whatever hours. Do you understand? Something that really irritated me when I watched it was more about, I wish they had explored race, because he was being bullied by 2 Asian, 1 man, 1 woman, and a white lady. But the white lady was the head of the bullying. Do you understand? She was the orchestrator. She was, that gang spirit that possessed all of them. She gave birth to the gang spirit, if that makes sense. And I wish they explored race a little bit more. The writers of Sticks and Stones is also apparently the writers of Dr. Foster, and I really, really enjoyed Dr. Foster. But the reason why I wanted to talk about it on the podcast is I feel like there were so many things that Thomas could have done to mitigate the bullying that he was going through. He reacted too late, and I think part of it is, and I get it, it's shock. Is this really happening? Is it in my head? The challenges of mental health in the workplace. I definitely think workplaces need to explore that more, and I get it. But I couldn't help but think, what I want you guys to do is I want you to watch it. So listen to my podcast, obviously. Go and watch Sticks and Stones and then come back and listen to my podcast again, because then everything I say will now start to make sense. I always tell people who follow me on Snapchat, there is no better way to protect yourself than to cover yourself. Now, you guys are going to think I'm a little crazy, and I actually don't care, because this has been the difference between climbing the ladder and growing in your career, but also navigating the social aspects of work. Now, if Tom had, now I call it a burn folder, and in this burn folder, it's where I gather and I house evidence of something that's happening in the workplace, because sometimes things just happen as a one-off. They're not always like something sinister behind it or whatever. But I have a folder everywhere I work, whether I'm a permanent member of staff, whether I'm a fixed term contract member of staff, or whether I'm a contractor. I have a burn folder. In that folder, it is information, dates, times, and what has happened. Especially when you know that this thing is wrong, this can't be happening. And I'm not saying that every time something happens you react. Sometimes you have to build a case, and part of building that case is to have a burn folder. And the reason I call it burn folder is because you try me, the burn folder will burn your finger. You'll get burned, okay? No, but on a serious level, I tell people all the time, you need a burn folder. Now, I remember a place where I used to work, and there was a young guy that joined as an analyst. Immediately, I was very drawn to him. Young black boy, Nigerian, Igbo, just like me, and I was drawn to him. I literally, it was like looking at my brother. Do you understand? I took him under my wing, and when he joined the organisation, he said to me, after a couple of weeks, I introduced myself, that type of thing, because you have to watch. You don't immediately, when someone joins, you just go, dear, hey brother. You don't do that, because you have to feel this person out. Like, is this person on the level? A few weeks into his role, I introduced myself. He started speaking in my language. I said, no. We don't speak in our language here in front of everybody. Nope. He said, why? I said, don't worry. One day I'll take you to lunch and I explain it. I took him to lunch. I said, listen, these people, they hire us because they know they don't have a choice. Either it's for their quota, staff quota, or it's because they know that we're best in class at what we do. So they don't have any choice. They have to hire us. But what we don't want to do is give them a reason to say anything. So when we're in the office, it's in the same way as if other people are speaking in their language. I love hearing different languages. But in the office, you have to play the game. And you have to be a politician. And all the politicians in parliament, they all speak the same language that each other understand. I said, but when we're outside work, of course you can speak our language. If there's an emergency that you need to say to me, then of course you can say it in the language. But I need you to be aware that I don't want anybody to have an excuse to say anything. He said, Toya, understand. As time was going on, I noticed that he became quite into himself. Wasn't the kind of bubbly guy that I had, met when he'd started. And the head of department was new. And I'm going to come to that story about the head of department. We're going to call him, Michael. The head of department, we'll call him Michael. So basically, Michael had hired this young black boy, and we're just going to call him Richard. So I hired Richard as an analyst, and said to Richard, there's going to be a head of, I'm going to hire a line manager for you, because the analyst work that you're doing needs to be managed by whosoever. That person that Michael, who head of department, had hired to line manage Richard lasted 1.5 weeks, because Michael is mad. Middle class white guy from Surbiton. He thinks he's better than everybody. He will come and tell you how many swimming pools he has in his house. He will come and talk to you like you're just one type of mugu. Anyway, Richard then said to me, took me aside one day, he said, Toya, Michael, he makes me uncomfortable. He says certain things, I said, listen, you're going to have to start developing a burn folder. I said, you need to see this organization for what it is. What are your objectives? What are you trying to get out of this workplace? What is it that you want? Is it a course? Is it da-da-da-da-da? You need to have objectives for yourself. Get what you want and go. Because at this point in this particular workplace, I used to be a perm and I came back as a contractor. That's a whole nother story. Came back. So I already knew how it operates there. Anyway, I subsequently left the contract. I finished my contract there. They wanted me to come back under another title to do another role. I said I wasn't interested. I wanted to go to pastures new. So I was recently advised that Richard, everybody was having end of year review. Yeah? And as Richard had no line manager anymore, it's the head of department, Michael, that would now be obviously doing that end of year review with Richard. So when Richard went to Michael's PA to say, can I put some time in the diary to do end of year review? He was met with an email from Michael's PA basically saying, I've spoken to Michael. He said that he doesn't need to do an end of year review with you. Bearing in mind, Richard had planned this end of year review. This was an opportunity for him to understand how he's going to go into the next year, all the objectives. Because let's be real, if you don't have an end of year review and have objectives, how are you going to measure your progress? How are you going to be measured against bonuses and things like that? So it's highly important that Richard had that end of year review. And that's one of the things I told him. So Richard became very disheartened, very upset about it. But I had always advised Richard to make sure he puts everything in writing. I said, make sure if you have to copy in HR, make sure you do. You have to cover your back. Unfortunately, Richard didn't listen to me. So what then subsequently happened, to be honest, is Richard's fault. And he can't come and tell me what happened. I heard from somebody else who used to work in the same organization we did. So one day, head of department Michael sends Richard an email. I would like to have a meeting with you in half an hour to discuss your end of year review. So Richard's like, what is this? What do you mean? This man didn't want to talk to me about this. All the prep that I did for it, I don't have it. 30 minutes and then I have to go into this room. Anyway, Richard ended up going into this meeting with Michael. And the meeting went as follows. Michael said to Richard, how do you think you've been doing? Richard's like, it's been difficult. I haven't had a lot of guidance and I've asked for work and Obviously, I had a line manager. She didn't last long, so I definitely feel like I don't have direction. He said, let me stop you there. I have a concern. This is what Michael says to Richard. I have got a concern. He said, what's the concern? He said, well, it's the quality of your thinking. Let's just say that Richard never spoke for the rest of that meeting. And I believe he's been put on performance review. Richard can't come and tell me this, It's somebody else that came to tell me this. But I can't intervene and advise Richard unless Richard contacts me and says, Toy, this is what happened. What's your advice? He hasn't done that. but I'm going to tell you guys where Richard went wrong. So before we go there, I want to say that head of department, how dare you say to somebody the quality of your thinking? You might as well tell the boy that he's stupid, because you're basically saying the way you think is stupid and dumb, and I don't even know why you're here. That's what it is. I can tell you now comfortably that the head of department, Michael, is now planning to manage Richard out. That's what he's doing. Because now he's probably looked at it and thought, the head of department that I had has left. It's made me look bad. Richard, I wanted him to come here as an analyst, but the reality of it is, I need to save costs, because Michael's thing is save costs. I need to get rid of headcount to save costs. Richard has to go. Now, had Richard listened to me from before I've been advising this guy, there's not one conversation I haven't had with this guy. What he would have done is, from the point in which the performance review, he tried to basically say Michael doesn't need one or whatever, you put it in writing. Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for our recent conversation. I just wanted to summarize it for the avoidance of doubt. You have advised me that even though everybody is having an end of year review and I am also a permanent member of staff, you have advised me, and you put it in quotes, no end of year review is required. However, in the spirit of progression and understanding the direction of my role, I would at least like us to agree on some key objectives for next year in order for my performance to be measured against those key objectives. And this will obviously form the basis of any type of bonus review. Full stop. It doesn't have to be in a long conversation. You just send it. Because what that means is you've got Michael now on a tightrope. Because HR are copied into it. And you're not now addressing it to HR. HR should just be aware. Because I can tell you that what Michael had done in terms of the performance review, HR weren't involved. I can tell you that for a fact. So sometimes you've got to shame the devil. And you just end it with a smile. Because you know Oyibo people, when they're coming after you, they'll be smiling, money, 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 money. How are you? And they're already signed off on your redundancy. So you two have to now use the tricks that they're using. You have to box smart. You have to be strategic. But that's not what happened. Michael allowed that to go underneath the carpet. Then that's how you find yourself now a few weeks later. Now my man is telling you about the quality of your thinking. What pains me the most is this is a young black man, fresh from his master's. This is his first role. And basically, Michael is a manager that is bullying him and crushing his spirit. And for me, I keep being told by everyone around me, I can't be everyone's superwoman. And I'm not everyone's superwoman. There needs to be a level of humility. When someone comes to you ask for help, there's a level of humility they come with. If you just go there to give you advice, that's when you see the disrespect. They say, did I ask you? And I'm not here for that. But then I had to take what happened with Richard as a learning lesson in terms of dealing with managers and understanding that bullying isn't necessarily shoving you in the corridor or putting your head inside the toilet bowl. That's not necessarily the only way to bully someone. It's that undercover bullying that will make you restless and sleepless. And then when you go to the office, the manager that is bullying you or the members of staff that are bullying you are there smiling in your mouth, in your face, making you think that you are crazy, and you're not. So you can imagine when I watched Sticks and Stones, I was just like, there were so many things that Thomas, as an employee, could have done to protect himself. He could have strategically, literally written all the events that happened in which that he feels bullied or he's questioning, like, why this is happening, dates and times and what happened and any witnesses. But he didn't do that. And he allowed it to build up, and you see that he breaks down quite a few times. There was 2 outbursts in the office, and the focus is then on his outbursts. The focus is not then on what has happened that has led up to the outburst. And this is where, from a Toya Talks perspective, I always tell people, leave your emotions outside of the office. Leave it outside. As soon as you start taking emotions into the office, I guarantee you got everything wrong. Oh, but Toya, it's easier said than done. No, it's just a matter of you compartmentalizing what this is. This is a workplace. This is where you go and you earn your money. This is where you are growing in your career or want to add something to your repertoire of knowledge and experience. Take a workplace for what it is. Stop looking for salvation in an office. Stop looking for salvation in an office. Mental health is something that I am so passionate about because my mental health was challenged back in 2014 when I lost my father. And it affected every part of my life. And it affected work. It affected everything. But work also was part responsible in saving my life because I needed routine, I needed purpose, I needed all that. And I definitely found that with work. But work is like a cesspit of people who are just bullies. And it's not necessarily about you. They're just like that. As a black woman in the office, I can definitely say to you that I know that most of 95% of some of the bullying I have encountered in the workplace has been, the foundation of that bullying has been because I'm a black woman. Because I'm black and because I'm a woman. This same Michael, head of department, when I was a perm member of staff, the head of department at the time, I had been there, I think, 10 months or so. The former head of department had left, and that former head of department is actually the person that hired me. And I got on with her very well. This particular organisation is a difficult organisation to work in just because of what they do. It's quite niche. And what you tend to find in that particular organisation is they had a revolving door. So people were leaving all the time. Their attrition rates was just terrible. Anyway, so when the head of department, Michael, had joined, I am the type of person, when I meet somebody new, I fall back because I don't know you from nowhere. I fall back, and as I tell everybody on my Snapchat, spend more time observing before you jump in. Because when you observe, give yourself a few months, 3 months, observe the landscape. You learn so much about people. And in the same way I had observed Michael, new head of department, my spirit never took to him at all. My spirit did not take to him. And it was this smarmy, salesman-like behavior of kissing us with everybody. This man will be happy from the morning. Money. Early in the morning, 7:30 in the morning, my man will be screaming like this. I said, that's not normal. That is not normal behavior. And anybody that's too happy and there's no balance, that's a problem for me. I need to watch you. I need to understand, are you on drugs? Like, what is it that you're really doing? I need to understand, are you just happy with life? What is it? Do you know that within 3 months of this man's tenure, everybody was there kissing and licking his ass? Not me. Do you know that he made 85% of the workforce redundant? This man never followed any proper protocol. There was one member of staff that was on paternity leave. He called him to tell him, just to let you know that your job is at risk. This is a man doing happy-go-lucky, we're all friends for life and thing. Everybody was shocked. One of my friends that was made redundant, he was shocked. He said, Toya, why do you not seem surprised? I said, how can I be surprised? I've been watching this man for over 3 months. So there's nothing that surprises me about this man. He's capable of it. He said, but Toya, how did you know? I said, okay, I'll tell you how I knew. End of year reviews were coming. Remember, this man had been in the organization less than 3 months by the time my end of year review had come. And my direct line manager had said to him, because she told me this story that I'm telling you now, that, I've got Toya's end of year review. He said, oh, okay, I would like to add something. She said, oh, really? He said, yeah. She doesn't, her face, her face. My line manager said, what is it about her face? Her face, it's like, she doesn't really smile. Her face doesn't fit. This is what my line manager came to tell me during my end of year review. I said to that, my line manager, I said, first of all, there's certain things that as managers that you guys should talk about that should be kept within managers. You don't come and share with other employees. But since God has used you now to come and reveal to me what he said, let me help you and say something. I said, I'm disgusted that this is something that a head of department can say to any member of staff. I said, as an ethnic minority black woman, I'm often been told in my life that my face doesn't fit. But my face will fit where I decide to stand. And if he has an issue with my face, I suggest he takes it up with HR. I said, but you telling me this and parking this here at my end of year review where I have excelled in my job is quite disheartening. And that end of year review ended abruptly. I was pissed. And I wanted her to know I was angry. When I went back to my desk, I sent an email to my line manager. And I CC'd that head of department. And I said, hi Francis, thank you so much for my end of year review in which I scored 10 for all the criteria. I also take your feedback about my performance and how you're impressed with how I've delivered these multi-million-pound contracts. And I named what I'm known for, the particular contract that I'm known for. I wrote it in that email. I would also like to reiterate what you had communicated to me, but reiterate how I felt about what you had communicated to me. And then I regurgitated everything that she said. And I in my last paragraph, I wrote, it is unfortunate that working for a global, multicultural organization, that a new head of department would deem my face unsettling to the point in which he believes my face does not fit. Hopefully going forward, he becomes accustomed to my face and the many different faces in this organization. Full stop. Kind regards, Toya. And I sat there and I was like, yes, this is how you build your case. Because I know that this man wanted me out of my job. I know it. Because he didn't like the fact that I don't lick his ass. I'm not there smiling and showing all my teeth that are in my mouth, including my wisdom teeth. I know that he's not happy about it. And when they do that every Thursday drinking at the pub, I'm not here for it. I used to do work drinks once a month. Again, I'm going to talk about that separately, a separate episode about boundaries, but I used to. But as soon as he joined, I stopped going. Because I wanted that distance, because I needed to watch this man. So when this man had said what he said to my boss, and my boss said it to me, I was like, you know what? This is how you now start building a case. This is what you put in your burn folder. Because you never know when you're going to need it. I didn't need to copy in HR. I needed him to know that I knew. And I needed my line manager to know that I know, that she knows, that I know, and now he knows. Do you understand? Till today I'm talking to you. You know, this man never even said a word to me. Because you see the devil, sometimes you have to shame the devil where he stands. And how is he going to come back from that? You know, one thing about white people is they don't like to be called racist, but they do racist shit. So I didn't call him a racist, but I let him know that as an ethnic minority black woman, you know when you start writing them one there, you know it's capital racism that you're writing there, but you just don't have to say it. It's when he moves mad again, then I have something to refer to. So when I told that my colleague that had been made redundant about this, I said to him, when he did this, he showed his cards. Michael showed his cards. So I already knew that not only is he ruthless, he's unethical, and he's just not a nice person. So this redundancy that you guys are going through, you're all shocked. I'm not shocked. And the reason you're shocked is because you didn't do your due diligence on this type of person. And you guys now haven't protected yourself. He hasn't gone through the right channels. He hasn't done the right things and followed the right criteria. Unfortunately, you've already signed stuff now. You've already accepted the redundancy. There's no point arguing. What are you going to do? I say all of this to say, again, bullies in the workplace are not the ones that shove you in the corridor. They're not the ones that when you're talking, their spit will be landing on your face. Sometimes it's the challenges to your mental health and the way they do certain things. That is workplace bullying. And this is why it's so important that you encourage your workplaces. I don't mind coming to speak to your workplace. I'm not bothered. Sticks and Stones on ITV1. You all need to watch it. Get people to watch it. Get your friends to watch it. everybody needs to watch it. Because even though I feel they could have, explored other things a lot more, I think this is the beginning of exploring what bullying in the workplace sometimes looks and feels like and sounds like. And I think a lot of us have been bullied at work and not known how to deal with it. And sometimes it's not necessarily the first incident that you deal with. It's the subsequent ones. But how you deal with the first one is putting it on the table. I'm unsure whether this is of concern or not, but I wanted to draw it to your attention. Something happened today, and a similar incident happened a few months ago on so-and-so day at so-and-so time. Protecting yourself, it means you need to cover your back. And I think everybody in the workplace should have a burn folder. So, you see this whole banter? I just want to say this now. Don't allow yourself to not have any boundaries at work. Don't do it, because you'll learn to regret that. I'm not saying don't interact with your work colleagues. I'm not saying make enemies of your work. That's not what I'm saying. We're just talking about simple respect here. Respect. If you are going to the pub every Thursday, every Friday, you're getting drunk, you're getting around and you're doing this, you're doing just to fit in. I'm telling you right now, when you're going there to mumu yourself, don't ever think it's going to get you any special dispensation in the office. I hope I said that word correctly. But you know what I mean? You're not going to be more favored. I definitely feel like the success that I have experienced in my career has come from my ability to play the politics. And part of that politics is being friendly enough with my colleagues that they know I'm cool, but keeping the boundaries there that they know that if they cross it, I will check them. Everybody will tell you who's worked with me before, I'm really, really nice in the office. I know I'm nice. I make it a task to get on with everybody. I make it my job to, even if I don't get on with you, we'll have a mutual respect. But there are certain lines that cannot be crossed. So, for instance, there's certain conversations in the office you don't have. There are things I tell people on Snap. You don't talk about religion at work, sex at work, your chosen sexuality. Don't be talking about it at work. Don't make it a topic of conversation because all you're doing is open yourself up to be offended, because you're opening yourself up to people's opinions. And not every opinion in the office are you going to agree with. Race. Why are you talking about race for? Everybody knows you're black. Everybody knows you're white. Everybody knows you're Asian. Everybody knows you're Chinese. We can see. You don't need to come and start talking about. Everybody knows. There's certain things in the office you do not talk about. Race, religion, politics, sex, sexuality, them things you have them converse. They're not your friends. So why are you having them type of conversations? Recently, we had the elections. Listen, no one needs to come and tell me where I'm contracting now who voted Conservative and who voted Labour, because I can tell who they are. When I came into the office, one of them, because I don't really talk that much. I just mind my business. I don't really talk to them. I do talk to them if I have to. I'm nice and I'm cordial, but I'm a contractor. So my mindset is very different. And I've only been a contractor for the last year. So I understand the politics of being a perm. I was a perm for several years before I became a contractor, so I get it. But as a contractor, I make it a point of view, don't ever get comfortable with me, please. Don't do it. But this one is a trier. Oh, so Toya, who are you gonna vote for tonight then? Sorry? Who are you gonna vote for? Oh, I voted. So you're waiting for me to ask you. I said I'm gonna vote for whoever my spirit guides me to vote for. Full stop. So now if I sit there and say I voted Labour, they'll say, why did you vote Labour? Oh, that Corbyn, and I can't get into them things there. Because all it takes is for you to have an opposing opinion to the majority for you to be an enemy. So better that we don't talk about it. EastEnders, you want to talk about that? I don't watch that anymore. We can talk about that. You want to talk about Love and Hip Hop? We can talk about it. You want to talk, cool, we can talk about them things. But when it comes to somebody's personal person, Them things I don't believe should be spoken about in the office. And creating those boundaries in the office is something, again, I said I'm going to talk about in another episode, because workplace boundaries is actually adds to the survival of your tenure in a workplace, and that's the truth. I just want to round up. I completely understand that there are some people who just have different personalities. Some people have newly come into the workplace and they're still finding themselves and are trying to understand how they assert themselves and fit in. I hate that word, fit in, because it's almost like you have to manipulate yourself to be part of the workplace, and you're already part of it because you're employed and you're getting paid. I understand that there's some personalities that are just really chilled and actually they don't want to have to do with all the fussing, and I get all that. But the workplace is a jungle. It's a live jungle, and you have lions, you have tigers, and you have bears, you have swans, you have all different types of creatures, and the jungle is survival of the fittest. And I liken the workplace to the jungle. It is survival of the fittest. And if you know that you're not able to secure your job and protect yourself, then you have no place being in a workplace, because all it is going to do is crush you. You have to be strong enough to know when you should assert yourself. And that's a really good question, Toya. When should I assert myself? When I believe that I'm being treated unfairly, or I feel uncomfortable, or I feel bullied. You should assert yourself at the point in which it happens. And now, when I say that quite loosely. I'm not saying in that specific moment. Sometimes you need to take time out away from that situation. However that situation has ended, take some time out, process what's happened, and then do something. You will hear in the previous episode, I was saying to you guys that in the situation, I never actually kind of reacted. It was only a day or two afterwards and I sent an email. Sometimes it takes that, because you need to now understand what's happened. You need to process it, and it's not always done in the situation when you feel that you've been dealt with or treated in a really bad way. Whenever you are going to HR or making a formal complaint, one thing I will always ask you, what is the outcome that you are trying to pursue here? Vengeance is not an outcome that is healthy, because what you will find that you shoot yourself in the foot in the pursuit of vengeance. If your desired outcome, is to make right a wrong, an apology, an acceptance or an acknowledgement from the powers that be in the office that something has happened and it's unjust and it's not right, fair enough. But never make your outcome about vengeance, because I promise you, vengeance is like a dirty pair of socks. It stinks and everybody can smell vengeance from a mile off. Don't allow yourself to be trapped in the feeling of vengeance as a badge that you wear so boldly. Don't allow yourself to be a victim of your own emotions because of vengeance, is what I will always say. Under promise, over deliver. Some people are so caught up on making such a good impression, and part of it is when you feel like you're bullied at work, sometimes you feel like you have to almost prove yourself, and you have to, almost make yourself uncomfortable just to let them know that, no, I'm really trying here. Don't bully me. I'm really, really good at my job and I want you to really like me. And I'll always say to people, if you know you're being bullied, deal with that in isolation. And sometimes you being bullied isn't necessarily anything to do with your work or the way you're performing. Sometimes it just has to do with the colour of your skin. Some people bully people because they don't like black people. And it's a fact. Some people do not like black people. That is their problem. That is not yours. You go to work every day. And even if you don't go to work every day, you still go somewhere where you have to spend time, work and get money. You are allowed to have a healthy workplace. And I think that people underestimate the need to have a healthy workplace, a healthy work-life balance, a healthy workplace. And you've got to understand, these managers are not your God. Like, I definitely feel like when I was younger and I was first going into the world of work, white people are almost depicted in the media or in, fairy tales as white saviors. And the reality is you take that sometimes into the workplace as a new employee who's never worked somewhere before. And then when you see this quote unquote white savior behaving mad, you don't understand it. But the reality is, white people, white bosses, white middle class men, they are not your savior. They're not, they're human just like you. They make mistakes just like you. These rules and regulations are created by them. The difference is they've probably never even taken the time to read some of these regulations that they've put in place. All I'm encouraging people to do through Toya Talks is learning how to use those rules, regulations to your advantage, or use it to your benefit. Because this whole wrong and strong, I'm gonna go and show them, that don't work, babes. It doesn't work. What works is being strategic, as wise as a serpent and as cunning as a snake, and understanding how you then navigate the workplace. Bullying, racism, being treated in a disadvantageous way are all elements that people experience in the workplace. The responsibility then falls on you on how you are going to handle that and what you're going to do to get an outcome that makes the workplace more comfortable and palatable for you to attend on a day-to-day basis or whenever you have to attend. Bullying in the workplace is wrong. Bullying affects people in so many different ways. People become depressed. People then question their life and their purpose. People question whether they can go on. Workplace bullying has a detrimental effect on people in so many different ways. And it can even affect then your next role and how you interact with different members of staff. And this is why it's important to really start discovering who you are as a person. I always say, if you do not know who you are as a person, it's equally then difficult to navigate the workplace, because you are faced with things like imposter syndrome. There's so many things as a Black woman I feel that we face going into the world of work that has not necessarily been designed for us. So it's important that you have to go in there with self, and developing who you are and developing yourself is so important when you're going into the workplace, because you then start having an identity and understanding yourself. Therefore, a white man can't sit in your face and tell you that the quality of your thinking is not good. How can you come and say that to somebody? But if you're confident in who you are as a person, you know how to respond to a situation like that. So for me, first of all, I've said this previously, I believe that Richard is being bullied at work. The example that I gave you earlier, and being told by Michael, head of department, about the quality of his thinking, that is bullying. So was basically telling him he's not going to have an end of year review, he doesn't need one, but you give it to everybody else, and treating him in a way that is so different to everybody else that is being given those reviews. I want to also say that Richard was the only black man in the department. Do you understand? But then the way Michael treats his white colleagues is different to how he's treating Richard. It's wrong and it's bullying. And I definitely do believe that there is elements of racism that has governed the way that Michael has treated Richard, 100%. Now, if I had been in that situation and Michael had told me about the quality of my thinking, there and then I would say to him, can you please give me an example where you feel that the quality of my thinking has not been to your standard? And that would then form part of the email that I would subsequently send as a summary. I'll write it there, put it there, the examples that he's given. Who told you that your quality of your thinking is even good? Nonsensical nonsense. In the workplace can happen to anybody who is new to the workplace. If you've been working in an organisation for a long time, it can actually happen to anybody. I hope what this episode does is it opens up a safe place to have a conversation about workplace bullying, and also to talk about workplace bullying because of the colour of your skin. I have always said I speak from a position of a Black woman because I am a Black woman, and I definitely believe as Black women our experiences in the workplace are quite different to everybody else's, and it's a fact. I have witnessed so many different things during my working in the working world, and I can literally go on record to say that 9 times out of 10 my race has formed part of the reason that I've been treated in a way that is not acceptable. Fact. I can also say that it's taken time and experience to get to where I am now. I will never, ever tolerate bullying. Ever, ever, ever tolerate it. But there was a period of my life where I did, because I didn't know any better. And I would often compromise myself to fit in. You know, if it meant going out for work drinks, and I know that I'm not necessarily a drinker, I used to do those things. But I believe with experience and age came wisdom, and those experiences, I had to almost walk through hot coals to be able to be where I am now. And what I'm really hoping for Toya Talks is, Toya Talks should eradicate the need to I want you guys to learn from my experience. I don't want you guys to have to walk through the hot coals that I did. I want to be able to create a safe space, and I believe I have done, to have conversations like this and to talk about different things. There are so many things through the podcast that I'm going to be talking about. Imposter syndrome, setting workplace boundaries, understanding positioning. There's so many things I'm going to be talking about. But yeah, I hope that you have enjoyed this podcast. My name has been Toya Washington and I am really enjoying delivering this podcast. I also want to wish each and every one of you a happy new year. Please also follow me on my social media handles. Let's keep the conversation going. #Toya Talks. My Twitter handle is Toya, TOYA_W. Let me just make sure that's correct. Yes, it is. I'm very proud of myself getting my social media handles right. And my Instagram is Toya, TOYA_Washington. I will, in the next episode, be sharing an email address for you guys to write in with any of your problems, any of your questions that you have. And I will once a month be doing a session on here where I answer all your questions. But I will announce next week what that email address is. I just wanted to get into the flow of, developing this podcast, doing this podcast, and making it into being able to create with this podcast. So for next episode I will announce the email address. Please feel free to follow me on all my social media handles, as I've said before. If you're listening to me on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review the podcast. I definitely want to hear from you. I have so many people that follow me on Snapchat, and I really hope that you guys have made the transition onto my podcast. I want to say that you are amazing. It's not easy to hold a job. It's not easy to go into an office that you feel uncomfortable in, but it takes a certain strength to be able to do that. What we're now saying is we're going to turn that strength into something more tangible, i.e. being able to assert yourself and do it in the right way. I'm fed up of the angry black women stereotype. White women get angry too. And just because we are asserting ourselves doesn't mean that there's something bad about us, there's something wrong about us. To hell with the stereotypes. This is 2020 and we're creating a new lane for ourselves. And it's an opportunity here on Toya Talks to have safe and open conversations. I hope that you've learned from this podcast. Please join me again next week for another episode of Toya Talks.